Good afternoon, everyone. You know, just I'm not having the best day. Not really feeling like I'm all here today, but I'm going to do the best I can. Hope you had a wonderful Halloween. I know I did. There's nothing better than a bag of bones on Halloween. All right, I'm done being silly. Thought I'd lighten the mood a little bit with my good old pal here, Bones. Not a very great skeleton, but one we can use for Halloween decorations. So hopefully you are doing well. I'm going to throw my skeleton over here, so please give me a minute. All right, well, we're not, we're all done with the skeletal system in terms of looking at bones. Now we're going to talk about the items that move the bones, right? And so you're going to be diving into the muscular system here in week 7. And I have 2, and you can't see my screen because I'm doing the video today, and then I'll do the screen when I do week 8. But you have 2 weeks for the muscle system, okay? And specifically, we're going to look at skeletal muscle because you're going to talk about cardiac muscle and smooth muscle in other areas. So we're not going to talk about those 2 at all. But you're going to focus on skeletal muscle, how the anatomy of skeletal muscle. You're going to look at specific types of muscles. And then you're going to really dive further into the fibers of muscles, and then how do the muscles contract at the microscopic layer to allow a large muscle to have tension, contract, and provide work, right, or effort. So what I have here that I'm going to pull into the screen with me is my good old friend here. All right. If you were on campus, in a normal situation, you get to use these in lab, and we would talk about the models, and we might have some lab activities in terms of identification of muscles. And it is important to be able to identify muscles and understand where certain muscles are, because if you're going to go into nursing or certain field, there are places that you need to know where those muscles or structures are in order to place an injection, shot, those kind of things. But are there some muscles that really aren't probably that important for you to know unless you're going to become a physical therapist or a doctor? Yes. So I'm not going to focus on making sure you know all these muscles. To me, the most important part is understanding some of the muscles, understanding how muscles are grouped together, what their function is, and then microscopically, how do they function? Because the physiology of a muscle can greatly impact the healing, but also is connected to a lot of disorders or diseases that you'll see in the health field, right? Especially autoimmune disorders. So in looking at our lovely model here, we can see he's got a 6-pack. He's been hitting the gym. This right here, this muscle is the rectus abdominis, okay? And that's what gives that kind of look of what we call the 6-pack, all right? But you have other abdominal muscles, right? You have what we call, and you can't see them super well, but they've divvied it up on each side. So on the outside here, we have what we call the external obliques, okay? And the external obliques are fibers, and it's hard to see on here because I'll try to zoom in close. Okay, their fibers actually run, I'm going to get my finger oriented here. Their fibers run down, okay? But then on the other side, you have the internal obliques, and their fibers actually run this way. They run up, okay? And it's more like this. So I keep looking at myself in the camera, and then I'm making my angles bad. Okay, but those are part of your abdominal muscles. Then you have a transverse abdominis that you can't see here that runs underneath all of these. Okay, and that helps hold, okay, with your peritoneum, which is a membrane underneath. If I were to take this off, we could talk about the peritoneum, but stuff will fall out. We'll talk about that in 242. But your peritoneum is underneath this, and then these muscles are over top of that, and it holds your intestines in. These are also really important, right, because it holds you upright. Okay, other major muscle areas, we have our pectoralis major. And right in here, you can't really see. I mean, this isn't a great depiction, but your pectoralis minor would be right underneath it. Okay. You have intercostal muscles, which are in between the ribs. You can see them here. These are intercostal muscles. And again, I know you can't specifically see it. You're just looking at the area on this model. But intercostal muscles are super important for breathing. okay? And then you have a diaphragm muscle that's on the inside here, you can't see, that goes across, right? Kind of cuts the body in half through here, right below the lungs. And that's that's your most important muscle for breathing. It's what changes the chamber volume, or the cavity volume of your thoracic cavity, to initiate the breathing process, inspiration or expiration. And then we have our arms here. Okay, our arms you have your biceps, brachii that are in the front. So anytime we hear the word biceps, because we're going to hear it in other muscles, biceps actually refers to the fact that there are two heads to the muscle. So the muscle kind of branches, and there's two parts to it, to the full muscle part. Brachii is what refers to the arm. Like you've heard of brachial plexus, brachial artery, brachial vein. Brachial refers to this part of the arm region right here, okay? Then on the back of this guy, right, we have our triceps. So again, triceps brachii. Tri means three. Okay, there's a middle, a lateral, and a medial part to the tricep. And a lot of times they're not used in those terms. We have a long head, a short head, and a middle head of the tricep muscle. Okay, so and those are what help shape that kind of weird shape that a tricep has when you flex it. Your deltoids sit right here on top the shoulders. You can see this cap right here to the shoulder sits right over the top of that joint, which you just learned about in the skeletal system when you learned about the glenohumeral joint and the AC joint. Okay. On the back, you have your trap muscle that makes this big trapezoid here. This is your trapezoid. We call that the trapezius muscle. Okay. And because of the shape. All right. We have our latissimus dorsi right here as well. These are what we call rhomboids, and I'm sorry, I need to turn this more. Rhomboids, and again, I know it's hard to see these. I'm just showing you this. To get an idea, there's a lot of muscles, right? We have our gluteus maximus. Okay, you also have a gluteus medius and minimus. Okay, and so this is part of the gluteus maximus, medius, and then minimus is the deepest one underneath all of them. You have your hamstrings. I'm not going to go through. You can see them decently. I can go through them a little bit. But your hamstrings is a group of three muscles. Okay. You have your semimembranosus or membranous, and you have your semitendinosus, and you have your biceps femoris. Okay. The biceps femoris is always going to be lateral. Semimembranosus is a little bit deeper and sits medial. So it goes membranosus, tendinosus, biceps femoris, and your tendinosus has a big long tendon that comes off of it. So we can see here, and we'll look on this side because it's a little easier to see. This side is your biceps femoris. Right here is this one comes down as your tendinosus, and underneath it, which is hard to see on this model, is where the membranosus would be. Okay, but then you also have these adductor muscles on the inside of the leg, and I'm not going to go through on here what those are, but you have adductor brevis, longus, and magnus. Okay, and what does an adductor muscle do? Well, an adductor muscle allows you to bring your legs together back towards the midline. Okay, so these are important. Now I could keep going on, and we could go through all these muscles. Okay, you're going to have activities that dive through the anatomy of the muscles. You're going to watch videos to talk about all these, and you're going to have another one of those online lab quizzes. Do I expect you to memorize and know these all the time forever? No. But it's important to go through some of those activities, spend some time doing some basic memorization so you can start to get a layout and understanding of where muscles are located, certain ones, why they are in those spots, and why they're named a certain way. Okay, and what their function is, because muscles are what drive with the joint, with the type of synovial joint, how a bone moves, right? The other thing to think about when we get into these muscles is you're going to have to then go down the microscopic layer. So we're starting with a large muscle, and we're going to dive further in. And as you get further in, you're going to see that there's smaller and smaller fibers, okay? And so we have this muscle fiber that's basically a giant long cell. And then within those muscle fibers are these fibrils that are made up of what we call myofibrils that are made up of sarcomeres. And sarcomeres are a bunch of proteins that work together with ions and allow our muscle to create tension and perform work and perform a contraction. Okay, so what's going to happen in week 7? You're going to work through a bunch of readings and videos initially. Okay, so you're going to read some units on muscle. Okay, and look at muscle contraction, muscle innervation, macroscopic muscles of the body, and then you're going to dive into some activities. So you're going to have a Lapster simulation on action potentials. Okay, you're going to have a muscular contraction activity where you have to walk through how to perform muscular contraction in terms of the steps. Now, we're not talking about contraction like this. We're talking about contractions within the actual muscle. Okay, and then you're going to dive into muscle fiber types. So within muscles, there's different types of muscle fibers that are more active under certain situations. So for example, when all of a sudden I have to sprint across the road really fast, okay, I have fast twitch muscle fibers that are anaerobic, meaning they don't operate on oxygen. They use our creatine phosphate systems and other stored energy systems to react really quickly. And those are super explosive muscle fibers that fatigue quickly. Okay, and then there's a few others all the way down to ones that work all the time, don't fatigue, and use oxygen and ATP through the cellular respiration process you learned in Biology 160. So you're going to do an activity on muscle fiber types as well. And then when you get into week 8, you're going to continue on into talking about more about muscles, and you'll have a video for week 8 as well. Okay, so week 7 is your first jump into muscles. Okay, you also are going to have a team patient case study to begin to look at, where a woman who's a scientist trips and falls and knocks over a sarin-like gas and has some problems. So you're going to want to make sure you dive into that early on. And as usual, reach out to me for help. Get the help you need, and I look forward to hearing from you and watching you learn through this module for skeletal muscle. Take care.